And I'm here today to talk to you about Edge and IoT. You might have heard of edge computing, some of you. For some of you, that might be a new topic. I want to introduce you to that. But I also want to explain to you who we are as a company, what we do, where we are. And I have some experience, that's also why I'm on stage today. In the past, I've been for about 20 years in the software industry. I've run my own company that was focused on IoT software. So I have some domain experience that allows me to share a few things with you as we are also looking at growing our channel partner community. If you want to connect with me, I've got the QR code on LinkedIn up on the screen. Feel free. You can, of course, also look me up, but feel free to connect if you wish to and have more conversations with us. All right, then let me jump in. So as a company, we're around the world. We're a very global company. We cover all the major industries. We're really proud to be leading a lot of the digital transformation projects that many of our customers are involved in. Of course, also working with our channel partner community in enabling our customers to fulfill their needs around digital transformation. We're very evenly spread throughout the world with our business across all continents, and with our, I think, 134,000 employee base, we've been able to grow nicely. Very proud of that growth of our history that is over 100 years, and we've been evolving quite a bit, as you can imagine, over the years, and now we're in the fourth industrial revolution, where we're also trying to go with the flow, if you will, and look at what we need to do in the business to keep going and innovate. And when it comes to innovation, we continue to invest in R&D, and I will mention to you a few of the products that have come out over the last 12 months or so that are applicable to our channel partners and the community to allow you find and win more projects. So there are some buzzwords in the industry that you will hear. Digital transformation is one, IoT, edge computing, Industry 4.0. And some of you might have heard about these, and I want to take a little bit of the abstract element out of these and demystify it as much as I possibly can. And there are some examples that I'm going to walk you through that show you real-life implementations. Another example in healthcare, there's this one company that is using wearables and working together with hospitals. These are distributed to patients to monitor patient health. Instead of being notified as a medical staff if there's an issue with a patient, you can proactively look at the trends around patient health, make predictions, and be notified very instantly if there is something that the staff needs to look at. Lastly, ourselves. We have smart factories. We are also using IoT. We are a manufacturer of IoT, like our smart apps, the uninterruptible power supplies that we provide. They're IoT enabled, but we use IoT. We have, just last week, we opened a new factory in India that is a smart factory where we have deployed a lot of IoT sensors that allow us to be more efficient, to have higher output, to have more visibility into the quality. So I want to give you these examples to see there's a wide variety where IoT has already been deployed. Some people, or you will have potentially customers saying, well, what do I do with that? I'm not really sure how to implement it, and they will look at you as an IT solution provider for your guidance. What does it mean for you? Do you have an offering that you can provide to them? Or do you have someone in the ecosystem you can work with? But it's about having that understanding that with technology, you can solve problems, like I've just mentioned, and then be more efficient and potentially, and hopefully, even increase your revenues. Another example is a bank, very large bank, and they're distributed around the world. They're originally from Spain, but you will find in many other countries. So if you think about banking when you go to a bank, when was actually the last time you went to a bank? I have to think back quite a long time, and that was the last time when I was at a bank, probably to deposit a check or something. But most of us, we use mobile apps today to do our banking transactions, to do any kind of banking business that we need to do. But what does it mean for the banks? If I don't go to the branch anymore. A lot of banks have a lot of branches, a lot of staff employed, they have retail space that is expensive. Are they getting the most out of that? And what about customer retention? or attaining new customers. How do they do that if I don't visit the bank anymore? What does it mean to them? So they need to rethink who they are as a bank, what are the services they want to offer, and how do they speak to their customers. So this is an example of a bank who is changing the layout of their branches. So what they've done is they've included cafe experience, like something like similar to a Starbucks. You go to the bank and you find these sofas. It's very comfortable, very cozy, and it very much appeals to people who are interested in having a coffee and going to a coffee shop. But instead of going to a coffee shop, you go to the bank. And what they say about themselves is, our revolutionary work cafes provide another example of our commitment to innovation and evolution and to the progress of people and businesses. So what they're doing here is they're trying to change their experience, and they want to appeal to small, medium businesses in a different way, and to startups. They're providing free workspace to small companies, to small entrepreneurs. But the coffee shop experience is also supposed to appeal to your millennials who have just finished university, who don't have this loyalty perhaps yet to a certain bank brand, and they think that by being to the outside more dynamic, more agile, offering a different experience, they can provide just that. So you wonder, why am I mentioning this? How does that relate to a Schneider Electric and APC, what we do? Well, this is about digital transformation. They're using technology to operate differently as a bank, as a whole. It changes their culture. If you go into this branch and there's no counter, who you're going to talk to? Actually, there's someone who still works there. They have an iPad, a tablet, and they're going to sit down on a sofa with you, and if you want to open a bank account, you can still do that. You don't have to do that in a counter. So they're changing the experience. We are providing the infrastructure that is behind that. We're enabling that from an infrastructure perspective. And I'll talk to you about that a few slides down, where I talk about our offering. So when you look at IoT, what is IoT's big value? It's not just the sensors. The sensors have a purpose. They're supposed to look at something. It's connected to machines, is perhaps they're controlling an environment, and like I mentioned before in agriculture, but what's happening is that data is being collected. And well, if you have a lot of data, it only really makes sense if you're collecting it, if you can analyze the data. This is where you gain value. This is where you create value. But you need the intelligence behind that. And the intelligence was really just released a few years ago, when the big cloud companies who were previously making the intelligence available only in the cloud had decided, well, technology has evolved, and because it's become commoditized, the prices have gone down and it's become smaller. So what we have is intelligence in the cloud. We can now run on-prem, at the edge. Edge means, in this sense, very close where the data is being created, it's also being analyzed. Think about the banks, think about agriculture, about the parking. Data is collected right in this spot where it's created and analyzed there. If a supermarket, say, collects 2 terabytes of data about what's happening in a branch, does it make sense to send all that data up to the cloud, setting it up, storing it? No, it doesn't. If it's 2 terabytes of data, you're going to have cost. Sending the data up, do you have enough bandwidth? And then storing the data is also very expensive. And then lastly, do you need all of that data in the cloud? Probably not. What you could do is you consolidate and filter the data, make it available as part of a dashboard in the cloud. But you need the intelligence that is on-prem, in this case, at the edge, that is analyzing the data. You will find different use cases across all verticals. So in my role, we're looking after, the team that I'm in, we're looking after APAC, Middle East, Africa, and South America. And I've heard people say, well, you know what? Isn't IoT really just for the developed markets, where they embrace technology much more than in other places, and they find the use cases, and we're not really sure in our country if it makes sense for us to deploy IoT. Actually, it does. We see these projects everywhere, absolutely everywhere in all of the countries across a very wide region. I will have examples for you from Thailand over to India, to Chile, to the Middle East. These are happening absolutely everywhere. What's the key here is the CXO level, the decision makers who have some sort of vision that they communicate, have the ability to communicate to the people around them, and they then try to formulate what that means to the company. How can they use technology to sort of execute on what's been told to them, what the company should do in terms of the outcome. And I'll give you a few more examples as we go along. So when you think about IoT, you will then ask, well, okay, this sounds interesting, Oliver, so tell me about the different verticals. Where do you see the opportunities? Well, the first one you will find is in industrial. This is your manufacturing, oil and gas, pharmaceutical manufacturing, the heavier industries. You will see that the most opportunities are there. And the first one you will see them deploy IoT is for operational efficiencies. Think of looking at output, the yield that a certain machine has. Think of oil and gas, the deployment of sensors to look at whatever they have in terms of looking at in their manufacturing. So they have instant visibility, but when you have a good deployment of these sensors in that segment, you will be creating a lot of data. That data needs to be analyzed. This is really key here at any point in time. Then you have government spend or public infrastructure. That can be in smart cities, traffic lights, for example. You will have that with public transport, where they can monitor public transport being more efficient around that. But you will also see that in military. So we see in government spending, and I look at the projects that we have, it really makes up a big part of that. Combining the top 5 verticals, you're at 66% of the total IoT spend. And I'm going to break that IoT spend a little bit down here. When you look at the products, the IoT products, that's your hardware, that's your software, those things combined, versus the services. So what's interesting for you if you're a channel partner? Well, you always like to probably resell hardware, and that's a nice business, there's some margin there. But higher margin for you as an IT solution provider, possibly a managed service provider, is on the services side. This is where you can differentiate. This is where you can stand out, provide more value to the customer to help them understand what it is that they can deploy with your support. And that makes up actually the majority of the spend, of the total IoT spend, going from 2018 to 2023. So one thing to keep in mind here is that this is already happening today. We're not talking about something that might happen in the future. That change in the industry is already happening today. It will only get bigger. And if you are a traditional data center partner that has worked potentially with us over the years, this statistic might worry you a little bit. Because today, enterprise companies, 10% of the data that they collect and analyze, 10% of that is outside of centralized data centers. That is going to flip to 75% in only 5 years from now. 75% of the data will be managed, collected, analyzed, processed outside of centralized data centers. That's a huge change. And as a partner that has worked with us over the years, my question is, how are you going to deal and how are you going to offer something in that regard? What is your solution to the changes that are happening in the industry? So what are some of the benefits that we see at the edge? One is already one that I've mentioned, is you can save cost by analyzing the data where it's being created and collected versus sending everything to the cloud. You don't need to do that. And you can provide a consolidated view still on the cloud to, for example, at the HQ level that a customer might have. The nice thing here is also when you use edge computing is you have very small latency because you're making the decisions right there where the data is being analyzed and being collected. And if you have some outages, it's shielded. If you're not reliant or if you don't have a direct connection to the cloud, you can still operate at that branch even when that connection goes out and you were fully reliant on the cloud. In that case, that is not the case. So I'm going to give you quickly some examples. I have about 5-6 minutes or so. So the first one in retail, we're working with fast food chains who deploy self-serving kiosks. Consumers are very open to using technology where they can serve themselves You will have seen it in fast food. We provide the infrastructure in the back end that is powering these edge solutions. And what they're also doing is they're connecting their equipment that they have in the kitchen. So let's say you have a power outage. If your equipment as a restaurant is not working, you have to shut down. But if you work with us and use our equipment, your equipment will continue to run and you can operate as a fast food chain and provide your goods and services to consumers. They're also powering these kiosks with the servers that are deployed as part of the rec solutions that we provide. So they can run these promotions that they have available on these kiosks. One last interesting thing here is that some of these companies are actually buying up AI solutions. So they're thinking, so we already have something out there that we've deployed and there's still horsepower available. Why don't we do more? Now we can use sensors to look at the foot traffic. Which customers are responding to certain promotions and the offers that we have more than versus others. So they can use software. You have to sort of think about that almost twice. This is a retailer who's buying an AI company because they understand the power of the data. They can be more efficient and possibly sell more. The next one is an example from a jewelry chain that we're working with today in India. It's the 4th largest, I believe. And they have around 2,500 stores across the country. And this is something that we are just started talking about very recently. I'm very proud of this project in retail, but they're working very closely with us. They've deployed our racks, and they look like your very sort of IKEA-like almost cabinets in the back room. They're sort of fashionable. They fit in nicely into a jewelry environment. And they have been able, for example, to reduce the supply, their lead times from their supply chain is by, I think, 50% by using technology on site to service their customers better, understanding their needs and demands, but also things that the jewelry store relies on is security. So in some cases, they have about 150 cameras installed per store because they carry goods of about $1.5 million US per store. So security is very important to them, and these devices are then powered and controlled by the service and the software that is running on these servers locally. In banking, I've already mentioned the Banco Santander is a different type of experience. In healthcare, we recently worked with a hospital in Thailand that has deployed one of our infrastructure solutions in their radiology department. So what they're doing, the images that are being captured in the radiology department are then being analyzed by a machine learning solution that is being deployed. And they're also looking at deep learning, that how the software then helps the staff to detect any anomalies in the patient health so they can service and help their patients much faster. In education, we're working with schools or universities. There are, for example, requirements by some governments that they need to report on progress, on how schools are doing, and any changes to the curriculum. That data is stored locally, updated regularly, and then sent up to the central instance that the government has. And you will see more schools and universities also deploy IT infrastructure, and this is where we come in with our software. We have a cloud-based service that allows you to remotely monitor the equipment that is deployed. So if you have, for example, an organization that has 50 locations, do you think that at every of those 50 locations you will have an IT engineer that is monitoring that? Of course not. So you can use our cloud solution to monitor and look at any potential issues that you have when you have an edge solution deployed. And then lastly, in government, this example from the UAE, when you want to renew your ID, you can go to one of these self-serving kiosks instead of having to go to a counter and waiting your turn until maybe several hours later. You can do these things now within a few minutes. And then, for example, in government as well is traffic light management. So these things, the government or the local authorities are thinking how they can be more efficient and rely on a central yet local instance that allows them to manage the traffic lights in that particular city. So this is our lineup for the edge. This is when you think of APC, Schneider Electric, this is where we come in and enable the edge. This is where we provide the infrastructure that will power any of those IoT deployments or the edge environment. We have different racks. I've got this little boy there, green marked in the corner. This is our 6U that we launched just about 2 months ago. And imagine we provide the gear for your Facebook or your Googles of the world with large data centers. So we have that experience. But at the edge, you have different needs. This is where we come in with a much smaller solution. It's fully integrated with a smart app and a PDU. It runs really well in those smaller locations like in retail or you find in banking or in healthcare. And then part of that too are your smart apps, your uninterrupted power supplies, your power distribution, PDUs, and lastly the software. The software is something that we've built purposely with MSPs in mind, because with our solution you will have, as an MSP, your recurring revenues on a monthly or on a yearly basis. It's multi-tenant capable, where you can manage different customers centrally and look at potential issues. One thing to keep in mind here also, it's vendor agnostic. So we cut across different vendors that allow you to manage that environment.